you know that you can end up in the hospital for 5 days by being dehydrated? Yeah, me neither. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Noelle Jones. We're not even going to do an intro. We're going to skip the whole intro. Go grab a cup of coffee. By the end of the video, you may want a little something stronger than that. It's a doozy. Grab some laundry. Put your earpods in. AirPods. Earpods. My teenager fusses at me all the time about what I call those. I've got my laundry. Because we are 2 weeks behind in laundry. So we're going to do this. That way we're not like awkwardly staring at each other, but we're getting something done. Okay? Short story long. Let's see, 2 weeks ago on Monday, my 4-year-old woke up with a stomach bug. And she was throwing up. So I got up, I was helping her. Well, then I heard the baby in her crib crying, and I thought, well, she's probably in there sick too, because you know what? Life, right? So I was helping my 4-year-old. I got my husband up. I said, Jeremy, could you get up and help me? And he said, yes. So the next thing I knew, I heard a huge thud. And he says he fell. Well, I kind of snickered and I was like, you fell? What? How did you fall? And was kind of laughing about it. And he just said again, I fell. So I went in there to check on him in the bedroom, and he had busted his head open. He was laying on the floor, kind of like a starfish, like his head was like at the dresser, feet on the bed. He said, I think I'm bleeding. And I said, yep, you are. Let's get you to the bathroom and check you out. So we got to the bathroom, and he asked me to check his head. He had blood on him. So I said, sit down on the commode so I can see the top of your head. I'm going to clean you up and we'll look at what's going on up here, you know, because I'm a nurse. So I look at it, and he busted it pretty good, but it wasn't anything like to write home about. Like, I really didn't think it needed stitches or anything. But his head is really, his head's thick. Yeah. His hair's really thick. I couldn't really see. Well, he stood up and tried to he said, I just need to go lay down. And I said, Jeremy, sit down. You're not cleaned up. You ain't getting in my bed like that. So we cleaned him up. He kind of stumbled, like he couldn't stand on his feet. He stumbled, he fell into the door, he fell into the hallway. I kind of had to fight him back. And at that point, it kind of clicked with me that he was not himself at that point. He was he had lost a little bit of color and was kind of looking confused, kind of dazed or confused. And I thought, well, he knocked himself silly. So sitting back down, cleaning him up again, he lost all his color. No color in his lips. He turned like a grayish yellow-green color. His eyes were open. I remember looking into his eyes, and his pupils were huge. They were dilated. I just remember the blacks of his eyes were so big. And he basically went unresponsive on me. He kind of fell back against the wall. I'm getting distracted with my hands and not doing laundry. Fell back against the wall and was doing this like with his eyes open, mouth open, but not responding to me, doing this like breathing sound that it sounded like air wasn't getting through. And at that point, I started like shaking him with he felt so clammy. I remember him feeling so clammy when I had his shoulders. And I was shaking him. I was smacking him in the face, and I was like, stay with me. And I was smacking him, and then I was like, I've always wanted to do this, but not like this, you know what I mean? So I was smacking him. Well, my 4-year-old, remember, she was in there sick. She's standing there like, had her go get my phone, because at this point he was still non-responsive. I was screaming for my teenager. She was in her room with the door shut, so she didn't hear me. So the 4-year-old had to go find my cell phone. We called 911. He kind of started coming back too, and looks at me like I could kind of see he was back in there in his eyes, you know. And so he looks at me and he goes, what are you doing? Looking at me like I'm the crazy one. And I was like, I'm on the phone with dispatch. And I think he saw that 911 was on my phone. And he goes, we don't need them. What are you calling them for? And I said, Jeremy, you don't know what just happened. Well, he looks at me straight in the face and he goes, yeah, Noelle, I fell. Like, what's the big deal? And I said, Jeremy, you have no idea. And he said, well, what happened? And when I told him, he said, yeah, go ahead and call him. He does not remember getting up and trying to walk across the hallway. He does not recall anything that ever happened after that, like when he was not with it or passed out or whatever. He don't remember that. He said all he remembered was getting up out of the bed. He remembers stretching when I called him to help me. He remembers stretching. He remembers standing up. He said, I could not tell you if I was dizzy, if I was, feeling funny. I just remember standing up. I remember being on the floor with my head hurting. I don't remember the in-between. So they said, he needs to go to the hospital. And I said, yeah, I'm not keeping him here. So that's our only option. So we go to the hospital. They took him right in, hooked him up to all the leads, and everything checked out. Did a CT scan, which is what we were worried about. His mom had had a brain aneurysm 10 or 11 years ago, so that he was most worried about, like he had had a stroke or he had had an aneurysm or something in the brain. So when that checked out, that was a relief for us. And then basically they were like, you could have been dehydrated. You probably just stood up too fast. And I said, he's been standing up out of the bed for 47 years. And this has never happened. So something was not right today. And they're doctors. Like, they're in the ER. They're meant to get you stable, to send you to a doctor or keep you. And like the in-between, they just send you home and say, basically, if it happens again, we'll worry about it. Come back. If not, let's just hope it don't happen again. And I looked at the doctor and I said, so you're saying I have to take him home with me? Right. Because I was scared to death. I still wasn't convinced that he hadn't had like a little heart episode. And then we were going to have a bigger one later. I felt like they weren't listening to me. But anyway, sent us home. We did notice in his blood work, his potassium was kind of low, but they said they were going to give him a IV of fluid. They never did. They sent us on home, and I worried myself sick, honestly, because I thought, here we go, I'm going to find him with a massive heart attack or whatever, because the way my anxiety's set up, Well, that was Monday. Tuesday, he stayed home from work because he was still kind of, like, he had a concussion. I came home the next day and he was going to cook. He asked me to pick dinner up on the way home from work and had hot dogs cooked when I got home. And we had just had this conversation in the time it took me to drive home from work. So he completely forgot that he told me to pick something up on the way home, and he cooked anyway. And that worried me because I'm like, great, we've got brain damage. It's Tuesday. Wednesday, the next day, we all woke up at 4:30 a.m. with the stomach bug that Ellie had on Monday. And it was a bad one. It was a doozy. And so we had that all day Wednesday, and then Thursday, still feeling a little nasty, but stayed home from work to give it one more day because we were still kind of sick and didn't want to give it to anybody. Friday, I went to work. Jeremy stayed home because he's, again, like his head, his concussion-y stuff or whatever, he just wasn't feeling up to working. He started getting really bad stomach cramps and really bad stomach pains on Friday. And we talked about it, and I was like, it's probably, we've been throwing up really hard. Like, I threw up so hard, it gave me a nosebleed. And so I'm sure your stomach's sore. I mean, we've been puking for 2 days, Well, he was joking, like it was getting so bad. He was joking, like, set the timer, I'm having a contraction. And I was like, Jeremy, you couldn't have a baby. That's all I'm about. You couldn't have a baby. If this is bothering you that bad. Well, now I feel a little bit bad because what transpired from Friday to Saturday. So he hurt through the night. He actually ended up calling a friend of his that is a SWAT medic and asking him his opinion. And he said, no, quit drinking Gatorade. Too much sugar. Worst thing you can do when you're sick. Go get some Pedialyte. Now listen to this. Get Pedialyte, mix it half water, half Pedialyte, and try to keep that down. Well, Jeremy was making popsicles. He had the kids eating those push pops, and he'd fill it up with Pedialyte mixture and freeze it because that's all he could kind of keep down. And I thought, man, this virus is just really hitting him hard. Well, Friday into Saturday morning, he woke me up around 2 in the morning and was throwing up again. And it was like such a weird color, and all we could think was that it was popsicles, like, because that's all he'd eaten. And I was like, where is this coming from? You haven't eaten anything. I don't see how there's anything left in your body. And he was hurting so bad, he had me sit on the couch with him that night, which is not like him. He's usually one to really not care if you're around or not. And he wanted me on the couch with him in the middle of the night. And I thought, he must be hurting pretty bad. Well, he felt better on Saturday morning, and I think he felt better because he had emptied everything out. And Saturday, I went to work, called him to check on him. It was kind of up and down all day. Home from work Saturday, and he looked awful. His color looked awful. His skin, like he just looked bad, and he was hurting very bad. So we decided to call one of our friends who's a nurse, and thank goodness we did, because I'm just wife, I don't know anything, but she's like, Jeremy, your voice even sounds off, you need to get to the hospital, go to the ER right now. And I was like, yeah, that's what I said. Oh, he agreed to go to the ER. We get to the ER, he's hurting so bad he cannot even stand up straight, and his stomach actually looks 14 months pregnant at this point. So we get into the ER, they take us back, they do some scans, and they come back in and said that he had a obstruction in his intestines. So basically nothing was going through. They were so inflamed and so dehydrated, they just completely got lazy and quit working. So they kind of explained it like when you're hydrated, your intestines is fluffy. And his was basically like when you get that dehydrated, like trying to push something through a shoestring. So that's how a doctor explained it to us. At that point, they had to put a tube, while he was awake, down his nose into his throat to pump, like into his stomach, to pump out, basically do a stomach pump. And we thought, okay, they're going to do that for a couple hours, give us some medicine, and we're going to go back home. We did, 5 days later. So they do the stomach pump, and it pumps out, I want to say, because I look back at my pictures, like the timestamps on my pictures, and I want to say within like 5 or 6 minutes, it filled up I'll just post some video. If you have a weak stomach, just fast forward, but it filled up a whole like little canister in literally 5 or 6 minutes of stomach bile. And that's why his stomach was so protruded, like so what's the word I'm looking for? So there was a D word they used. So distended, I think it was. That's how long it takes my brain to think of words. The goal was to get the pressure off, get the fluids in so that his intestines could start working. I think I just said intestines. Hey, I'm telling you all this to say, because my husband does not drink water, ever, he lives on, like I told the nurse, they asked him, and he's like, yeah, I'm not dehydrated. And I said, can you call on me, please? Because the man drinks nothing but Diet Dr. Pepper. Like, he's got it running through his veins. So we need to, hopefully he's learning a lesson through this, because I'm just the nagging wife when I'm like, you need to be drinking water. They decide in the ER they are going to keep us. And my husband's like, when's the tube coming out? Because this is very uncomfortable. And they said, maybe 24 hours. And he was like, 24 hours? What? So they move us up to the room. And up there, he asked, when can this tube come out? And they said, probably a couple of days. And I thought, touche, ER nurse. You wasn't going to be the one to tell him that. We get up there, well he started getting sick again. So when you go up from the ER to a room, they have to like do a whole nother check-in process. It's a whole different unit. So they have to go through all the things again. And so they got him checked in, asked him all the questions, and he started being in a lot of pain again. I guess because they explained where the inflammation and all was, and where the issue was under where the bile duct feeds in. So he was steady getting stomach bile pumped into his intestines or into his stomach or whatever, and it had nowhere to go, which is why his stomach was filling up with nothing but straight bile and hurting, causing pain, and making him really nauseous. And so if the stomach pump's not pumping that out, it's going to come out. Well, the tube's still down his throat, and the nurse forgot to turn it back on, so he was plugged up to it, but it wasn't on pumping. And so he started getting sick, and she goes, let me go get you something for nausea because we do not want you throwing up. You could aspirate. Well, she didn't even get good to the medicine, couldn't even get down the hall, and here we go again. Y'all, there are no words to describe what I saw at that point. The only thing that I can relate it to, I kept asking the nurses, like, have you seen Pitch Perfect? Because the scene at the beginning of that where the girl gets sick, that's what it reminded me of. And I mean, there was nurses, like, it was so loud and so violent that I went out to the hall and I was like, help, he's sick, and y'all literally just said he's gonna aspirate. And so all these nurses come running, and they like stop in their tracks, and they're just like 100% in shock. And Jeremy is like, he had thrown up so much and so hard that he threw that tube up. So now the tube's out of his stomach, so it's like hanging out his nose and out his mouth, and the nurses are standing there like. So he goes, if somebody could give me some scissors, we'll just like tackle this problem. Let's problem solve. I don't want to pull the whole thing through my nose, so let's just like cut it so I can not have to pull the whole thing, through my sinuses. Well, everybody's still just like, so he just pulls it out. And so then they had to put another one in, which was thicker, and it was a little more like not as flimsy. And so it hurt him, and it took, I want to say, like 2 or 3 nurses to finally get it in. And he was in so much pain that I was sitting on the couch like just tears rolling down my face, because he had been through so much and was in so much pain, and they couldn't get it in, and it was hurting. And anyway, finally they got it in. Next day he starts feeling better, and I guess because those IVs are coming in, and I said, he's asked the nurse, I said, can I ask a question? Because at this point they knew I was going to. I'm gonna need to know why you're. If any of you are like that, let me know, because it makes me understand better if I know why, right? So I asked the nurse, I said, look, he's been on IVs now for almost 24 hours and he hasn't peed yet. Is that something we should look into or worry about? And she goes, I thought he was peeing in the jug we gave him. And I said, no, the nurse gave it to him, but he hasn't used it yet. I'm forgetting to do laundry again. She said, yeah, that's a problem, because if his intestines are that dehydrated, then his kidney probably is too, and it's probably like not working like his intestines are. And I went, wonderful. Great. So she did an ultrasound, and she's like, yep, there's urine in there. If you're not going, then we're going to have to do a catheter. And he goes, nope, I can do it. I can work it up. I've got this. I can make myself, we do not need to do that. I can do it. I can make myself pee. I promise I can do it. And so she's like, well, you can try, and then we're going to have to do a catheter. And I tell you, I don't know where that man went in his brain, but when that word catheter was mentioned, and if there's any men watching this, you can attest for this, I guess. I've never had one, hopefully never have to. But when he said the word, when his brain heard that word catheter, that's all it took. That man worked up pee from I don't know where, and he did just enough that they didn't have to do the catheter. Boy, that's like mind over matter, let me tell you. So he was feeling better that day. Well, then the next day, his color started looking bad again. Then he started running a fever, and the nurse was like, we were worried about you. Oh, at the end of the day, the nurse was like, we were worried about you this morning. I'm glad you're finally looking a little better. And I thought, I can't take anything else. I guess the moral of this story is, like, I had no idea that you could be that dehydrated and your body not give you signs or signals. Like, that could have been really bad. They told him in the ER that he maybe had a day, and it would have, or maybe pushing 2, that he would have been in some serious trouble. So we had no idea that your body could be that dehydrated and you not know it. Now looking back, you know, I kind of have a little bit more peace of mind now that all this happens from when he fell, because like I said, I still was not convinced that it wasn't like a little heart episode that was going to be worse the next time it happened. But now looking back and seeing that his potassium was kind of on the low side in the ER, and then through all this 5 days in the hospital, they gave him 8 bags of potassium, and it was still on the low side. His potassium was still low. And so that's dehydrated. Like, and I had no idea you could be that bad and not know, or not have, you know, your body give you some kind of signals, which I guess, I mean, passing out's a signal, but like that was to a point that like there should be something in between there. I thought, like, to be drinking water and passing out, you're so dehydrated, like maybe there'd be something in between. But anyway, important to drink so much water. And you health people out there, if you're watching this, may know, you know, I've heard half your body weight in ounces is what you should be drinking. But I mean, that's just like to keep up to normal. I had gotten him some liquid IVs powder, because I've been seeing that at Costco and everybody rants and raves about it. And I told the doctor in the ER, and he's like, yeah, that wouldn't have touched the level of dehydrated he is. And I thought, Jeremy, this is why I have to nag, because look at yourself. And, you know, in the hospital when he started feeling better, I did say, I told you so. And he would not admit that my nagging was beneficial or validated, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So his words, and I took it as, Noelle, you were right, was, he said, I think this has been a learning experience for all of us. And I said, so I was right. I understand. You don't say no more. Say no more. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. But I tell you, my 4-year-old is a daddy's girl. And that whole thing in the bathroom when she saw him like that freaked her out. I mean, it freaked me out, so I can only imagine my 4-year-old and like what her little brain was trying to process. So since he's been home from the hospital, she has not left his side. If he has to go to the bathroom, she goes with him. She makes sure that she tells him to eat small bites, because I guess she had heard us say the doctor said to eat small meals but more frequently until his intestines kind of get back to feeling normal. And so she's constantly like, eat small bites, Daddy, eat small bites. But I tell you, water is so important, and you hear it and you know you should be drinking water, but I mean, it's easy to get slack with it, and you know, you drink stuff that tastes better, and then who wants water? But anyway, maybe our story can help you out and scare you into drinking more water so it doesn't happen to you. That is it. I hope there's not a part 2 to this story. The way my anxiety's set up, I can't take it. So anyway, give this video a thumbs up. And if you are not a subscriber to my channel, I would love it if you would subscribe. We have adopted 2 kids. We have a teenage daughter, and we both have full-time jobs, and our life is just chaos. And I have been told, if it's going to happen, Noelle, it's going to happen to you. So follow our chaotic journey on my YouTube channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Hopefully not a part 2.